Why did Lois Lane quit after the first season of The Adventures of Superman? Lois Lane, one of the most iconic characters in the history of comic books, has become a symbol of strength, intelligence, and resilience since her debut in the 1938 comic book Action Comics #1. Created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, she appeared in the very same issue that introduced the world to Superman. Since then, Lois Lane has evolved from a daring journalist in the bustling metropolis of Metropolis to a cultural icon, inspiring generations of readers and viewers through her portrayal in various media adaptations, including television, film, and animation. Lois Lane's character was inspired by strong women of the early 20th century. Siegel and Shuster based her initially on actress Glenda Farrell's portrayal of a smart, tough reporter in 1930s films. From her inception, Lois was designed to be much more than a damsel in distress. She was a courageous, no-nonsense journalist working for the Daily Planet newspaper, determined to uncover the truth at any cost. Her relationship with Superman has been central to her story, but her character has always had an independent streak, often refusing to rely on Superman's help, despite being one of the few people to know his true identity. Lois was a trailblazer, representing professional women in a time when women were rarely depicted in high-status roles like journalism. Her portrayal, especially in early comics, reflected her boldness, with her dedication to chasing stories and often finding herself in perilous situations. She was among the first female characters in comic books to challenge the stereotypical portrayal of women. Lois was intelligent, quick-witted, and always 2 steps ahead, which made her one of the most respected reporters in the DC universe. As societal norms shifted, so too did the portrayal of Lois Lane. In the 1950s and 60s, the character saw a shift, sometimes being relegated to more traditional roles, such as being more focused on her romantic aspirations towards Superman. During this time, stories often revolved around her attempts to prove Superman's identity or marry him, reflective of the era's more conservative views on gender roles. However, the 1970s marked a significant turning point for Lois Lane, as second-wave feminism began to reshape how female characters were written in media. She was re-established as a dynamic, fully realized character. No longer was she just Superman's love interest, but an assertive and independent professional. This transformation paralleled the rise of real-world women's empowerment movements. Lois was depicted as a top-notch investigative journalist, fearless in her pursuit of the truth. She went on to win multiple prestigious awards within the Daily Planet's fictional universe and became a respected media figure in her own right. Lois Lane has been portrayed by numerous actresses in various adaptations, each adding unique layers to the character. Phyllis Coates and Noel Neill were the first to bring Lois to life on television in the 1950s Adventures of Superman. Their performances showcased Lois' resourcefulness and confidence, setting the stage for future interpretations. In the 1970s and 80s, Margot Kidder famously portrayed Lois Lane in the Superman film series alongside Christopher Reeve. Kidder's Lois was modern, smart, and unafraid to challenge societal expectations, becoming one of the most beloved interpretations of the character. In the 1990s, Terry Hatcher's portrayal in Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman further highlighted her independence and chemistry with Superman. Hatcher's version of Lois was a career-driven woman who prioritized her professional life while also navigating her evolving relationship with Clark Kent. Erica Durance continued to build on this strong character in the television series Smallville, bringing a younger, grittier take on Lois as an ambitious college student and budding journalist. The latest portrayal by Amy Adams in the DCEU films added emotional depth, showcasing a Lois who is compassionate, ethical, and a strong moral compass for Superman, particularly in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. Lois Lane, the iconic character from The Adventures of Superman, was originally portrayed by actress Phyllis Coates in the first season of the show, which aired in 1952. However, Coates did not return for subsequent seasons, and her departure has sparked curiosity among fans for decades. There are multiple factors that contributed to her decision to leave the role after the first season, and the reasons extend from both personal and professional considerations. One of the primary reasons Phyllis Coates left The Adventures of Superman was due to her burgeoning film career. Before and during her time on the show, Coates had already established herself in the industry as a capable and versatile actress, appearing in numerous film projects. By the time she finished filming the first season of The Adventures of Superman, she had received several film offers that seemed more promising for her long-term career in Hollywood. Television in the early 1950s was still seen as somewhat inferior to film, and Coates, like many actors of the time, prioritized the silver screen over what was considered the less prestigious medium of television. Additionally, her contract with the show was not particularly binding. When The Adventures of Superman wrapped its first season, the producers did not immediately secure Coates for future episodes. There was a notable gap between the production of the first season and the second. During this hiatus, Coates signed on for other projects, notably some film roles that conflicted with the production schedule for Superman. By the time the show was ready to return, Coates was unavailable, and her contract had not stipulated her involvement beyond the first season, which left her free to pursue these other opportunities. Another significant factor in Phyllis Coates' departure could have been financial. In the early days of television, actors were often underpaid compared to their counterparts in film. Coates, who had experience in both mediums, may have felt that her compensation for playing Lois Lane was not commensurate with the demands of the role. Television production schedules were grueling, and the role of Lois Lane required a significant time commitment. If Coates felt that her talents were better rewarded in films, she may have decided that continuing with The Adventures of Superman was not financially viable. There was also the reality that the show's budget was relatively modest. The Adventures of Superman was a syndicated series, which meant it did not receive the kind of backing network shows did. As a result, the production team operated under strict financial constraints, and salaries for actors were often limited. This was in sharp contrast to the financial allure of film roles, which likely offered higher pay and more flexibility in the kinds of characters Coates could play. Creatively, Phyllis Coates may have also felt limited by the character of Lois Lane as it was written for the television series. In the 1950s, female characters in television were often relegated to supporting roles, even when they had significant screen time. While Lois Lane is a central figure in the Superman mythology, her role in The Adventures of Superman was often secondary to that of Superman, Clark Kent. Coates, who had previously portrayed strong female characters in other films, may have found Lois Lane's characterization to be somewhat restrictive. Lois, though depicted as a determined reporter, often found herself in need of Superman's rescue, and her character development was limited by the episodic nature of the show. Coates may have wanted to pursue roles that allowed for more depth and range, as opposed to the more formulaic plotlines of the series. The production environment of The Adventures of Superman itself may have also played a role in Coates' decision to leave. Television in the early 1950s was still evolving, and safety standards on set were not always rigorous. The show was known for its low-budget, fast-paced production, and the stunts performed by the actors, particularly George Reeves as Superman, could sometimes be dangerous. There have been reports of mishaps during filming, including incidents with the primitive wirework used to simulate Superman's flying sequences. It's possible that Coates, concerned for her safety or uncomfortable with the fast and loose nature of the production, opted to leave the series rather than continue in an environment she found challenging. On a more personal note, it is also worth considering Coates' family life at the time. Although less is documented about her personal situation during her time on the show, many actors of the period made decisions based on the need for stability or a preference for certain working conditions. The demanding schedule of television, combined with the relatively low pay and limited creative opportunities, may have simply not aligned with her personal priorities at that stage of her life. Coates could have been seeking a better work-life balance, which might have been easier to achieve through film roles, where production schedules were less grueling compared to the rapid pace of TV series filming. Phyllis Coates' departure opened the door for Noel Neill, who had already portrayed Lois Lane in the earlier Superman film serials of the 1940s, to step into the role. Neill brought a different interpretation to the character, and she would go on to become closely associated with Lois Lane for generations of viewers. The seamless transition between the two actresses suggests that the producers were prepared to move forward without codes, and they found an actress with a well-established history with the character. Neil's portrayal was lighter and more comedic, which may have aligned more with the direction the show's producers wanted to take in later seasons.